Have you ever stared at a pivotal moment in your life, knowing with absolute certainty you've made a terrible mistake, but feeling powerless to rewind the clock? Imagine a world where you have everything: wealth beyond measure, undeniable success, the envy of many, yet you find yourself utterly hollow. That's where our story begins today, with a man named Richard standing on the precipice of a decision that would unravel his meticulously constructed life. Richard Barnes, a name synonymous with innovation and billions, gazed out from his penthouse, the city lights below mirroring the glittering facade of his existence. Divorce papers, freshly signed, lay on his desk, sealing the end of his 5-year marriage to Olivia. He had achieved everything society tells us to strive for: a tech empire, lavish homes, private jets, and the currency of respect in the business world. But in the vast, echoing silence of his opulent apartment, all he felt was an aching emptiness. It's a paradox many successful people discover too late. True wealth isn't measured in assets, but in connections, in love, in shared life. And Richard, in his relentless pursuit of the former, had tragically neglected the latter. Then, a sudden buzz. A text from his friend Marcus. A seemingly innocuous photo. But as Richard opened it, his world tilted. There was Olivia, his soon-to-be ex-wife, her laughter vibrant and unrestrained, seated at a restaurant table. Across from her, a man leaned in, his gaze attentive, drawing from her a smile Richard hadn't witnessed in years. Her hand rested comfortably in his, a quiet intimacy that screamed volumes. Richard's knuckles whitened around his phone. This wasn't part of the script. Not now. Not when the ink on their divorce decree was barely dry. Not when he still instinctively reached for her side of the bed in the mornings. "Who is he?" Richard texted, a desperate plea masquerading as a question. The swift reply cut deeper. "Some doctor she works with. They've been spending a lot of time together since you moved out." The news struck Richard with the force of a physical blow. He poured himself a drink, then another, chasing oblivion, but the burning in his chest persisted. He had initiated this divorce. He had convinced himself they'd drifted apart, that their desires no longer aligned. He'd meticulously rationalized the end of their marriage, believing it was the logical, even kind, thing to do. Yet seeing her vibrant and happy with someone else, unburdened by his absence, shattered every one of his carefully constructed certainties. It's a common human failing, isn't it? We often don't truly appreciate what we have until it's gone, or, perhaps more accurately, until we see someone else appreciating it. Richard had chosen to end things, to push Olivia away. Now, faced with the consequence, he felt a primal urge to reclaim what he had so carelessly discarded. He hovered over her number on his phone, a torrent of words churning in his mind. "Sorry, mistake, tearing me apart." And but pride, that insidious whisper of self-importance, held his thumb still. Not like this. Not yet. After all, he'd made his choice. He couldn't fault her for moving on. Yet as dawn broke, painting the city in hues of regret and resolve, Richard made a decision that would redefine his path. He would win her back. He would show Olivia the man he could be, the man he should have been, the man he unknowingly needed to become for himself. But what Richard didn't fully grasp then was the monumental task ahead. Hearts aren't company assets to be reacquired with a hostile takeover. Trust, once shattered, isn't mended with a simple apology or a lavish gift. And Olivia, the woman he thought he knew, had undergone a profound transformation in his absence. She had grown, hardened, blossomed into a more independent, self-assured version of herself, far more certain of her own worth and what she deserved. The man in the photo, David, was merely the first ripple in a wave of changes in her life, changes that would compel Richard to confront the very foundations of their failed marriage and ultimately reveal what truly mattered. Richard's immediate impulse was to halt the divorce proceedings, a desperate attempt to rewind time. He called his lawyer, only to be met with the cold, hard reality. It was too late. Olivia had already signed, filed, and set the wheels of legal separation irrevocably in motion. The countdown had begun. "I need more time," he insisted, his voice laced with uncharacteristic desperation. "The process has started, Richard. There's nothing I can do unless she agrees." "Then I'll make her agree," he declared, his entrepreneurial determination flaring. He was a man accustomed to conquering obstacles, to building empires from dust. Surely he could rebuild a marriage. But the universe has a way of teaching us humility. He was about to learn that emotional landscapes are far more complex than corporate battlegrounds. Standing in his now empty bedroom, Richard surveyed the blank spaces where Olivia's life had once resided. The dresser devoid of her perfumes, the nightstand stripped of her books, the closet echoing with the absence of her clothes. Only memories and a crushing weight of regret remained. He picked up their wedding photo. Olivia, radiant in white, her dark skin luminous against the fabric, her smile brimming with hope and love. He barely recognized the man beside her, young, vibrant, full of shared dreams. Where had that man gone? When had the relentless pursuit of money and success overshadowed the woman who had stood by his side through every challenge? With the photo clutched in his hand, Richard walked out, prepared to fight for a love he had so carelessly taken for granted. He just prayed it wasn't too late. 2 weeks later, Richard found himself in the sterile environment of a hospital, a place so antithetical to his world of high-stakes finance. He sat in his car, mustering courage to face Olivia, a pediatric surgeon, in her element. What words could possibly bridge the chasm between them? Finally he entered, the receptionist's familiar greeting twisting the knife of pain in his gut. "Mr. Barnes, are you here to see Dr. Barnes?" The title was a stark reminder of what he stood to lose, the erasure of their shared name, their shared identity. Olivia was in surgery, he was told, but he could wait in her office. Her office was a testament to her life beyond him. Degrees adorned the wall, photos of her young patients smiled from her desk, and in the corner, a small potted plant, a gift from him, long forgotten, on her promotion to head of pediatric surgery. He picked up a vacation photo from Bali, their arms intertwined, her head resting on his chest. Had they been truly happy then, or were the cracks already forming beneath the surface of their perfect life? The door opened, and Olivia walked in, her surprise giving way to a carefully guarded composure. "Richard, what are you doing here?" He placed the photo back. "I wanted to see you." Her response was immediate, resolute. "The divorce papers are already filed. There's nothing left to discuss." Richard took a step towards her, his voice a desperate plea. "I made a mistake, Liv. I want to try again." But Olivia shook her head, a quiet sorrow etched on her face. "You don't get to call me that anymore. And you don't get to change your mind after pushing for this divorce for months." He confessed to seeing her with David, the man from the restaurant photo, the man who sparked this raw, unexpected regret. Her expression hardened. "You're spying on me now?" Richard tried to explain, but it sounded hollow, pathetic. He just wanted one dinner, one chance to explain. After a long, agonizing moment, she agreed, but with a caveat. "One dinner, that's it, and don't expect anything to change." Relief, a fragile flicker, coursed through him. "Thank you. I'll pick you up at 8. "I'll meet you there," she countered, the distance still palpable. As she turned to leave, he called out, "Olivia, I'm sorry for everything." She paused, but didn't look back. "Sorry doesn't fix what's broken, Richard." Her words echoed the sentiments of countless relationships where regret comes too late. It's a harsh truth. Apologies, while necessary, are rarely enough to mend deep wounds. They're a start, an acknowledgement, but the heavy lifting of rebuilding trust and demonstrating genuine change is a far more arduous journey. Richard, ever the strategist, approached their dinner with meticulous planning. The best table, Olivia's favorite wine, every detail perfect. When she walked in, simply stunning in a black dress, his heart pounded like it had on their first date. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his admiration genuine. Her thank you was polite, distant. "Why am I here, Richard?" she asked, cutting straight to the chase. He took a deep breath. "I made a mistake asking for a divorce. I've been miserable without you. I miss you." Olivia took a sip of her wine, her response a poignant revelation. "You miss the idea of me. You miss having someone waiting for you at home. But you never really saw me, Richard. Not for years." He protested, but her subsequent questions were damning. When was the last time he'd asked about her work? Remembered a dinner date without a reminder? Prioritized her over his company? He couldn't answer. The bitter truth was, he had taken her for granted, assumed her presence was a given, an unshakable constant. He had fallen into the trap of passive love, where commitment is implied but rarely demonstrated. "I can change," he promised, his voice earnest. "I want to change." Olivia's eyes softened ever so slightly. "People don't change overnight, Richard. Give me a chance to prove it to you, please." Then, a crucial moment. She spoke of David. "The man you saw me with, his name is David. He's a colleague, a friend, nothing more." Hope, vibrant and electric, surged through Richard. "So you're not seeing anyone?" "I didn't say that," she clarified. "I'm trying to figure out who I am without you. I'm focusing on my career, my friends, my life." It was a declaration of self-reclamation, a testament to her growth in his absence. "Could I be part of that life again?" he asked, his vulnerability laid bare. Olivia placed her napkin on the table. "I don't know, Richard. You hurt me. You pushed me away when I needed you most. You chose your work over our marriage again and again." He admitted his wrongs, his blindness. "I see that now." But Olivia, ever perceptive, challenged him. "Because you're lonely? Because you saw me with someone else? That's not good enough." In that moment, she articulated a truth many of us struggle to accept. Change motivated by external factors often lacks the depth and sustainability of change born from internal conviction. Richard needed to want to change for her, not just for himself. He reached across the table, taking her hand. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. "I love you, Olivia. I never stopped loving you. I just forgot how to show it." For the first time that evening, tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "I loved you too, Richard, so much. But love isn't always enough." Her words were a profound reflection on the multifaceted nature of love. Love can exist, deeply and truly, yet still be insufficient to sustain a relationship if other foundational elements, respect, communication, shared priority, and emotional presence, are missing. As dinner concluded, Richard felt a fragile glimmer of hope. The door wasn't entirely closed. "Can I see you again?" he asked. She hesitated, then offered an olive branch. "I'm having a fundraiser for the children's ward next weekend. You can come if you want. As a donor, not as my date." He eagerly accepted. "I'll be there." As she drove away, Richard understood the monumental journey ahead. Winning back her trust would be a long, arduous process, filled with unforeseen obstacles. He just didn't realize how deeply personal those obstacles would be, or the profound reason behind Olivia's recent transformation. The week leading up to the fundraiser was an eternity for Richard. He immersed himself in researching pediatric care, a world far removed from his corporate dealings. He poured $1 million into the children's ward in Olivia's name, ensuring his commitment was publicly acknowledged by the hospital board. This wasn't just about making amends, it was about trying to understand her world, to bridge the gap he had so negligently allowed to widen. He arrived early in the fundraiser, his heart a drumbeat against his ribs, scanning the opulent ballroom for Olivia. He found her, breathtaking in a deep blue gown that accentuated her glowing skin, engaged in conversation with a tall man, David, the man from the photograph. Richard's stomach tightened. David was handsome, radiating a rugged confidence, his eyes kind and warm. The way he looked at Olivia, with respect, admiration, and something undeniably deeper, sent a chill down Richard's spine. Taking a fortifying breath, he crossed the room. "Olivia," he managed, striving for an even tone. "You look amazing." Her surprise was fleeting. "Richard, you came." "I wouldn't miss it. This is important to you." She introduced them. "This is Dr. David Washington, our new head of cardiology. David, this is Richard Barnes." David extended his hand, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Your soon-to-be ex-husband. I've heard a lot about you." Richard squeezed David's hand a little too hard. "Funny, I haven't heard anything about you." Olivia shot him a warning glance. "David has been instrumental in developing our new heart surgery wing, the one your donation will help fund." Richard responded with forced politeness, his eyes never leaving David. "Happy to support such important work. I've always valued what Olivia does here." David's reply was a quiet barb. Olivia is one of the most talented surgeons I've ever worked with. You're a lucky man to have had her in your life." "Had?" Richard countered, his voice sharp. "The divorce isn't final yet." An awkward silence descended, broken by Olivia excusing herself to greet other donors and sending David to check on the presentation. Alone with Richard, Olivia's anger flared. "What are you doing? You're acting like a jealous teenager." "The way he looks at you suggests he wants to be more than friends," Richard retorted, his own jealousy overriding his carefully crafted composure. "Even if that were true, it's not your concern anymore." "It is if I'm trying to save our marriage." Olivia's voice was firm, unequivocal. "Our marriage ended when you handed me those divorce papers, Richard. You can't just change your mind because you're jealous." Her words were a stark reminder of the agency she now possessed, a power she had discovered in his absence. Before he could respond, the hospital director called for attention to the stage. Throughout the evening, Richard watched Olivia and David move seamlessly through the crowd, a practiced, comfortable team. They finished each other's sentences, shared inside jokes, touched each other's arms in casual conversation. They were partners, in a way he and Olivia once were, a painful echo of a past he had squandered. When the formal speeches concluded, he found Olivia alone at the bar. He praised her speech, his words genuinely appreciative of her passion and vision. "Why did you really come tonight, Richard? To see you? To show you I can change? That I want to be part of your life again?" Her expression softened. "I appreciate the donation. It means a lot to the hospital." "But not to you?" he pressed. "Money was never what I wanted from you, Richard. I wanted your time, your attention, your partnership." Just then, David approached, his hand resting lightly on Olivia's shoulder. "Ready to go? Our reservation is in 20 minutes. Olivia nodded. "You're leaving with him?" Richard's voice was laced with hurt. "We're having dinner with the hospital board," she explained, her voice neutral. "It's work." He wanted to protest, to demand she stay, but he bit his tongue. If he truly wanted to prove he had changed, he needed to respect her space, her autonomy. "Of course. Have a good evening." As he watched them leave, a new, fierce determination solidified within him. He would not lose Olivia without a fight. He would show her he could be the man she deserved, the partner she needed. But first, he needed to understand the true depth of what had gone wrong. The next day, Richard sought out Olivia's sister, Jasmine. If anyone knew the unfiltered truth of Olivia's heart, it would be her. Jasmine's surprise at his call quickly turned to guarded concern. "I thought you'd be off celebrating your bachelor freedom." "I made a mistake, Jazz. I want Olivia back." Jasmine's silence was heavy. "You hurt her badly, Richard. Worse than you know." He pleaded for guidance. "Tell me how to make it right." "It's not that simple. There are things you don't understand." "Then help me understand," he begged. Jasmine sighed, relenting. "Meet me for coffee tomorrow. There's something you need to know." Richard arrived at the coffee shop early, his mind a whirlwind of speculation. What secret could possibly be so profound? Jasmine's expression was guarded, a mirror of the strained relationship between them now. "You look terrible," she noted, without preamble. Richard offered a humorless laugh. "Thanks. Haven't been sleeping well. Having regrets?" "More than I can count," he admitted. "I miss her, Jazz." Jasmine's eyes softened slightly. "Why did you ask for the divorce, Richard? Really?" He confessed his perceived reasons. They'd grown apart, fought constantly, prioritized work. He thought they'd be happier apart. Now he realized his mistake, acknowledging his own stress, his negligence, his taking her for granted. Jasmine paused, then asked a question that would shatter Richard's reality. "Did Olivia ever tell you why she started working so many hours at the hospital last year?" Richard frowned. "She said they were short-staffed." "That was part of it," Jasmine conceded, "but not the whole story." What she revealed next would forever redefine Richard's understanding of his past failures. 6 months ago, Olivia found a lump in her breast. The floor seemed to drop out from under him. "What? No, she would have told me." "She tried to," Jasmine continued, her voice heavy with unspoken pain. "The night she got the results back, she made your favorite dinner, bought champagne. She wanted to tell you face to face. A cold, sick dread bloomed in Richard's stomach as he remembered that night. "I didn't come home. I had a business dinner that ran late." Jasmine nodded, confirming his worst fears. "She called you, but you didn't answer. When you finally came home past midnight, you didn't even notice the dinner or ask why she was still up waiting for you." "I had no idea," Richard whispered, his voice raw with disbelief and crushing guilt. "The next day, you complained about her working too much, about her not being there for you. So she decided not to tell you. She went through it all alone, the biopsy, the waiting, the worry." Richard's hands trembled. Is she... "It was benign," Jasmine assured him. "But she didn't know that for weeks. She thought she might be dying, Richard. And you were too busy to notice something was wrong." Shame, a searing, overwhelming shame, washed over him. How could he have been so utterly blind, so consumed by his own world that he missed his wife's silent battle for her life? "After that, she threw herself into her work," Jasmine continued. "The hospital became her sanctuary, the place where she felt needed and valued. And then you asked for a divorce." Tears burned in Richard's eyes. "I didn't know. God, Jess, I swear I didn't know." "That's the problem, Richard. You stopped seeing her. The real her. You were so focused on your company, on your success, that you missed what was happening right in front of you." Then came the question that had been gnawing at him. Does she have feelings for him? For David? Jasmine sighed. David was her doctor. He performed the biopsy, supported her through the whole ordeal. They became friends. And yes, I think there could be more between them now. He sees her, Richard. He values her. He puts her first. The truth landed like a physical blow. While he had been chasing external validation, Olivia had been confronting her own mortality, alone. While he had been complaining about her absence, she had been finding solace and support in others. This scenario, tragically, is not uncommon. Think of Sarah, who spent years trying to tell her husband Mark about her escalating anxiety. Mark, a driven executive, would nod, offer a platitude, and then immediately dive back into work, leaving Sarah feeling dismissed and unheard. Eventually, Sarah found support in a weekly women's group, where she felt truly seen and understood. When Mark finally noticed her growing distance and asked why she was no longer sharing her life with him, he was genuinely shocked to learn how much she had been carrying alone, how many attempts she'd made to connect, and how his perceived neglect had pushed her away. Like Richard, Mark had been a good provider in many ways, but a devastatingly absent emotional partner. "I need to talk to her," Richard declared, standing abruptly. Jasmine caught his arm. "Don't ambush her with this. She didn't tell you for a reason." "Because I was a terrible husband," Richard said bitterly. "Because she didn't want your pity or your guilt. If you want another chance with her, you need to show her you've changed, not because of what she went through, but because you truly understand what matters." Richard nodded slowly, the weight of his failures pressing down on him. "Thank you for telling me, Jess. I know you didn't have to." "I didn't do it for you," Jasmine clarified. "I did it for Olivia. She deserves to be happy, whether that's with you or without you." As Jasmine left, Richard sat alone, the enormity of his failure washing over him. He had been so self-absorbed, so blinded by ambition, that he had missed Olivia's pain, her fear, her desperate need for support. No wonder she had turned to someone else, someone who had been present when he was absent. He now understood that winning Olivia back wouldn't be about grand gestures or empty declarations. It would require profound, demonstrable change. He needed to prove he saw her, truly saw her, in all her complexity and vulnerability, and that her happiness was now his absolute priority. 3 days later, Richard stood outside Olivia's apartment, clutching a bouquet of sunflowers, bright and bold, like her spirit, chosen precisely because they weren't the predictable roses. He had rehearsed his apology 100 times, carefully omitting any mention of her health scare, respecting her privacy. But now, standing at her door, his eloquent words seemed utterly inadequate. He buzzed her apartment, his heart hammering. Her voice crackled through the intercom, wary. "Hello? It's Richard. Can I come up? Just for a few minutes." The pause stretched, an eternity. Then, the buzz. Olivia opened her door, dressed in jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Even so, or perhaps especially so, she took his breath away. "Sunflowers," she noted, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "You remembered?" "I remember everything about you, Liv. I just forgot to show it." She took the flowers, stepping back to let him in. Her apartment was distinctly different from their former mansion. Smaller, cozier, filled with books, plants, and vibrant colors. It was unequivocally her space, reflecting her authentic self in a way their grand, impersonal home never had. "I like what you've done with the place," he said, looking around. "It's not much, but it's mine." She placed the sunflowers in a vase. "Why are you here, Richard?" He took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since the fundraiser. About us. About what went wrong." Olivia crossed her arms. "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That I failed you. Not just as a husband, but as a friend, as a partner. I put everything else before you. My company, my success, my ego." Surprise softened her expression. She had clearly expected excuses, not accountability. "I was so focused on building our future that I missed our present," he continued. "I missed you, what you were going through, what you needed from me." Olivia's guardedness began to crack. "That's surprisingly insightful." Richard offered a rueful smile. "I'm trying to be better at seeing what's right in front of me." "Why now, Richard? Why the sudden change?" "Seeing you at the fundraiser, watching you talk about your work with such passion, I realized how long it's been since I really saw you, the real you, and I miss that person. I miss us." Olivia sighed and sat on the couch. After a moment, Richard joined her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I've changed too, Richard," she said quietly. "The woman you married doesn't exist anymore." "I know, and I want to know the woman you've become." She looked at him skeptically. "Just like that? You think we can start over?" "Not just like that," Richard admitted. "I know I have a lot to prove to you, but I'd like the chance to try." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, then her voice, though steady, carried a fragile vulnerability. "There's something I never told you. Something important." Richard's heart raced. This was it. "Last year I had a health scare," she began. "A breast lump. It turned out to be benign, but for a while I thought I might be sick. Really sick." Richard took her hand, his eyes welling with tears. "Liv, why didn't you tell me?" "I tried," she said, the hurt still raw in her voice. "But you weren't there. You were always working, always busy. And then you started talking about divorce, and it didn't seem to matter anymore." "It matters," Richard said fiercely. "You matter, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me." A tear slipped down Olivia's cheek. "David was. He was my doctor. He held my hand through the biopsy, called me personally with the results, checked on me every day until we knew for sure I was okay." And Richard felt a sharp stab of jealousy, but he pushed it aside. "I'm glad you had someone. I should have been that person. But I'm grateful you weren't alone." Olivia looked surprised by his response. "That's not what I expected you to say." "What did you expect? Anger? Jealousy? Questions about whether there was something between us back then?" Richard shook his head. "There probably should be. But all I feel is gratitude that someone was there for you when I wasn't, and shame that it wasn't me." Olivia studied him, a long, searching gaze. "You really have changed, haven't you?" "I'm trying to," Richard said honestly. "I can't change the past or what I did, but I can change how I move forward, if you'll let me." Olivia wiped away her tears. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Richard. You hurt me deeply." "I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I just want a chance to show you that things can be different." "What about the divorce? It's almost final." Richard took a deep breath. "If that's what you truly want, I won't fight it. But I'm hoping you might consider giving us one more chance." Olivia was silent for a long, agonizing moment. Finally, she spoke, a fragile offering. "There's a charity gala for the hospital next month. You could be my +1 if you want, just as friends." Hope, warm and vibrant, bloomed in Richard's chest. "I'd be honored." As he left her apartment, Richard felt lighter than he had in months. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, a chance to rebuild, a step in the right direction. What he didn't know was that their journey back to each other had only just begun, and the biggest test of their redefined love was still to come, lying hidden just beneath the surface of their newfound hope. The weeks leading up to the hospital gala were filled with small, delicate moments of reconnection. Coffee dates before Olivia's shifts, quiet lunches in the park, long phone calls that stretched into the night, exploring the contours of their new, fragile relationship. With each shared laugh, each vulnerable confession, Richard felt the towering wall between them slowly, painstakingly lower. He learned about Olivia's new life, her cherished friends at the hospital, her unwavering volunteer work with young cancer patients, her ambitious dreams for the future of pediatric surgery. He shared his own changes too, stepping back from the relentless grind of daily operations at his company, establishing a foundation to support medical research, and rediscovering his long-abandoned passion for photography, a creative outlet he'd sacrificed on the altar of ambition. Bit by bit, with intentional effort and a shared vulnerability, they were finding their way back to each other. Or so Richard desperately hoped. This period of tentative reconciliation is often the most challenging in any relationship seeking a second chance. It's not just about forgiving the past, but actively forging a new future. It requires patience, humility, and a deep willingness to listen, truly listen, to your partner's transformed self. Richard, for his part, was learning. He was actively seeing Olivia, not just as the woman he once loved, but as the complex, brilliant, and resilient woman she had become. 3 days before the gala, Richard stopped by the hospital, planning to surprise Olivia with lunch. As he approached her office, he heard voices, Olivia's and a man's, David's. "You should tell him," David was saying, his voice calm yet firm. "Before the gala." "I know," Olivia replied, her voice tinged with complication. "But he's really trying, David. I haven't seen him this open, this attentive since we first met." "And that matters to you," David stated, his tone gentle, devoid of accusation. "Of course it does. We shared 5 years of our lives. I loved him deeply. Part of me still does." Richard's heart soared at her words, a glimmer of light, but David's response brought him crashing back to earth. "And us? Does what we have matter too?" A long pause. Then Olivia's quiet, conflicted affirmation. "You know it does, but I'm not divorced yet. I need to be fair to everyone involved." "Fair to him? After everything he put you through?" David pressed, the kindness in his voice now edged with frustration. "David, please, I need to handle this my way." Richard instinctively stepped back from the door, his mind reeling. There was something between them, something real, something that threatened to unravel all his desperate attempts at rebuilding. Before he could decide whether to knock or simply leave, the door opened and David emerged. He stopped short, his surprise quickly masked by a cool politeness. "Barnes," he acknowledged. "Here to see Olivia?" Richard nodded, forcing a neutral expression. "Just brought her lunch." David's eyes narrowed slightly. "How thoughtful of you. Better late than never, I suppose." Before Richard could formulate a retort, Olivia appeared in the doorway. "Richard, I didn't know you were coming by." "Surprise!" Richard forced a smile. "I brought your favorite, from that Thai place on 4th Street. Olivia's face lit up. "You remembered? Thank you." David looked between them, then stepped back. "I should get back to my patients. Olivia, think about what I said." As David walked away, an undeniable awkwardness settled between Richard and Olivia. "Come in," she finally said, ushering him into her office. "This is a nice surprise." They sat at her small conference table, Richard unpacking the food, his mind a whirlwind of questions he knew he shouldn't, or perhaps couldn't, ask just yet. "How's your day been?" he managed, struggling to sound normal. Olivia smiled. "Good. I had a successful surgery this morning, a 9-year-old with a congenital heart defect. She's going to make a full recovery." "That's amazing, Liv. You're incredible at what you do." She looked pleased by his genuine interest. "Thanks. It's days like this that remind me why I became a doctor." As they ate, Richard struggled to focus. David's words echoing in his mind. What did Olivia need to tell him before the gala? What was truly happening between her and David? "Is everything okay?" Olivia asked, noticing his distraction. "You seem a million miles away." Richard hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I overheard part of your conversation with David." Olivia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "How much did you hear?" "Enough to know there's something between you two, something you're planning to tell me." Olivia put down her fork and sighed. "I wanted to have this conversation differently." "Are you and David together?" Richard asked, bracing himself for the answer. "It's complicated," Olivia admitted, her gaze dropping to her hands. "After my health scare, after you asked for the divorce, David was there for me. We became close, very close." "Are you in love with him?" Richard couldn't keep the pain from his voice. Olivia looked up, her eyes filled with a complex mix of emotion. "I care for him deeply. He's kind, attentive, supportive. Everything I needed when I was at my lowest." "Everything I should have been," Richard said quietly, the truth a bitter pill. Olivia nodded, not denying it. "But then you came back into my life," she continued, saying all the right things, being the man I always knew you could be, and it's confused everything. "What are you going to do?" Richard asked, the fear of losing her a cold knot in his stomach. Olivia met his gaze. "I don't know yet. That's what I need to figure out before the gala, before our divorce is final." Richard reached across the table and took her hand. "I know I have no right to ask this of you, but please give us a real chance. Not just coffee dates and phone calls, a real chance to rebuild what we had." The thought of losing her to David was agonizing. He knew that if he truly loved her, he had to respect her choice. "And if I can't? If it's too late?" he managed, his voice barely a whisper. "Then I'll accept your decision. But I'm not giving up without a fight, Olivia. I love you. I never stopped loving you." Tears filled Olivia's eyes. "I need time, Richard. Time to sort through my feelings, to figure out what I really want." Richard nodded, even as fear gripped his heart. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." As he left the hospital, Richard knew he was facing his toughest competition yet. Not another company, not a rival entrepreneur, but a good man who had been there for Olivia when he hadn't. A man who might have already claimed the place in her heart that once belonged to him. But Richard had never backed down from a challenge. Not when the stakes were this high. Not when the woman he loved was slipping away. The question now was, what more could he possibly do to prove to Olivia that his transformed love was worth a second chance, worth the risk of being hurt again? The answers, he suspected, lay not in grand gestures, but in profound, consistent presence. The night of the hospital gala finally arrived, and Richard had never felt more nervous in his life, not even before a billion-dollar merger. He dressed meticulously in his tuxedo, checking his reflection one last time before heading to pick up Olivia. Their conversation at the hospital had left things strained, heavy with unspoken tension. They had spoken on the phone, but Olivia remained distant, clearly still grappling with her emotions. Richard knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified him, that tonight might be his last, best chance to truly show her what they could be. When Olivia opened her apartment door, Richard's breath caught in his throat. She wore a stunning red gown, a color of passion and strength that seemed to embody her spirit. Her hair swept up to reveal the elegant curve of her neck. She looked not just beautiful, but confident, radiant, utterly herself. "You look incredible," Richard breathed, extending a small velvet box. "This is for you." Olivia opened it to find a delicate gold bracelet from which hung a single, intricately crafted sunflower charm. "It's beautiful, Richard." "To remind you," he said softly, his gaze meeting hers, "that even on the darkest days, you can still turn your face to the light, like you taught me to do." Emotion flickered across Olivia's face as she allowed him to fasten the bracelet around her wrist. "Thank you. It's thoughtful." The drive to the gala was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts, the air thick with anticipation. Richard yearned to ask if she had made her decision, if she had chosen between him and David, but he held his tongue. Tonight wasn't about pressure, it was about presence. At the hotel ballroom, all eyes turned as they entered. Richard and Olivia had once been the quintessential power couple, fixtures at such events, admired and whispered about. Now the whispers were different, laced with curiosity, wondering if a reconciliation was truly possible. "Dr. Barnes!" A young nurse approached them, her face bright with enthusiasm. "The children from the ward made you something." She presented Olivia with a large card, adorned with colorful handprints and heartfelt messages of gratitude. Olivia's face softened instantly as she read the card. "This is wonderful. Please tell them I'll visit tomorrow to thank them personally." Richard watched her, struck anew by the genuine care and compassion radiating from her. This was the woman he had fallen in love with, dedicated, empathetic, profoundly real. "You're amazing with them," he said as the nurse departed. "Those kids adore you." "They're the reason I do what I do," Olivia replied, her gaze distant for a moment. "Even on the hardest days, their courage keeps me going." Before Richard could respond, David approached, handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes fixed on Olivia. "You made it," David said, a casual familiarity in his voice as he lightly kissed Olivia's cheek. He nodded coolly to Richard. "Barnes." "David," Richard replied, forcing his voice into an equally neutral tone. An awkward silence stretched between the three of them until Olivia broke it. "Let's get some champagne, shall we?" As they made their way to the bar, Richard felt the immense weight of the situation. He was competing, not in business, but for his own wife's heart, against a man who had been there for her during his absence. It was a competition he wasn't sure he could win. Throughout the evening, Richard observed Olivia navigating between the two significant men in her life. With David, she shared easy laughter, intricate medical jargon, and discussions of patients, moving with the seamless familiarity of two people who shared a world, a purpose. With Richard, there was history, shared memories, a lingering spark that had never quite extinguished, but also a palpable tension, a sense of uncharted territory. During dinner, Richard found himself strategically seated next to the hospital director, separated from Olivia. Across the room, he saw her laughing at something David said, their heads bent close in intimate conversation. "They make a good team," the director commented, following Richard's gaze. "Dr. Washington has been a godsend for our cardiac program, and your wife has pioneered some revolutionary pediatric techniques. Together, they've saved countless lives." "Ex-wife soon," Richard corrected automatically, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. The director looked surprised. "Really? The way you two have been lately, I assumed you were working things out." "We're trying," Richard admitted, the complexity of his situation hanging heavy. "It's complicated." "Love usually is," the director said wisely, "but when it's real, it's worth fighting for." After dinner, as the band began to play and couples drifted onto the dance floor, Richard watched David lead Olivia into a slow dance. His hand rested intimately on the small of her back, their bodies moving in effortless rhythm. A sharp pang of jealousy, mixed with profound nostalgia, pierced Richard. He remembered vividly how it used to be, his arms around her, his laughter sparking the light in her eyes. Had he thrown it all away? Was it truly too late to reclaim that joy, that intimacy? As the song ended, Richard approached them, a determined resolve in his heart. "May I have this dance?" he asked Olivia, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. She hesitated, her gaze flickering between the two men, then nodded. "Excuse me, David." David stepped back, his expression unreadable. "Of course." Richard took Olivia into his arms as a new, slow melody began. Her familiar scent, a mixture of her perfume and the subtle, clean aroma of the hospital, enveloped him, unleashing a flood of memories. "Remember our first dance?" he asked softly. "At that charity ball in Chicago?" Olivia smiled slightly, a ghost of their past shared joy. "You stepped on my toes 3 times. And you still agreed to a second date." "You made me laugh," she said simply. "You made me feel like the only woman in the room." "You were." "You are," Richard affirmed, his voice thick with raw emotion. "Olivia, I know I've made terrible mistakes. I know I hurt you when you needed me most. But if you give me another chance, I swear I will spend every day making it up to you." Olivia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Richard, Before she could finish, a sudden commotion near the entrance interrupted them. A nurse rushed towards them, her face pale with urgency. "Dr. Barnes! Dr. Washington! It's Emily Wilson! Her heart is failing. We need you both now!" Olivia, with a surgeon's instinct, instantly shifted into professional mode, her personal struggles momentarily eclipsed by the gravity of the crisis. "Call the OR. Tell them to prep for emergency surgery. Have her files ready." David was already moving towards the exit. "I'll meet you there." Olivia turned to Richard, her eyes wide with concern. "I have to go. It's a 9-year-old patient." "Go," Richard said without hesitation, the word escaping him before he could think. "Save her." Badisam. As Olivia rushed away, Richard felt a complex mix of emotions. Immense pride in the extraordinary doctor she was, but also a chilling fear that this crisis would inevitably draw her closer to David, the colleague who shared her dedication, who understood her world in a way Richard never had and never could in the same capacity. With nothing left to do, Richard returned to his seat, his mind racing. What had Olivia been about to say? Was she going to choose David, or was there still a fragile hope for them? As the gala continued around him, a decision solidified in Richard's heart. If Olivia chose David, he would accept it, stepping aside to let her find happiness, even if it shattered him. But if there was even a sliver of a chance that she still loved him, he would fight with every fiber of his being to win her back. He would fight for the love he had almost lost, the future he desperately wanted to build. Hours later, as the gala was winding down, Richard's phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Surgery successful. Emily will be okay. Too tired to talk tonight. Can we meet tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you." Richard stared at the message, hope and fear warring inside him. Tomorrow would bring Olivia's decision. Tomorrow would determine the rest of his life. The next morning, Richard sat in a small cafe near the hospital, his coffee growing cold as he waited. He had barely slept, his mind consumed by the impending conversation. When Olivia walked in, she looked utterly exhausted, but also profoundly relieved. The emergency surgery had clearly taken its toll, but its success had lifted a heavy weight from her shoulders. "Hey," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Rounds took longer than expected." "No problem," Richard assured her, his voice tight with anticipation. "How's Emily?" Olivia's face softened. "She's stable. The surgery was touch and go for a while, but she pulled through. She's a fighter." "Like her doctor," Richard said, with a small, heartfelt smile. Olivia returned his smile, then took a deep breath, her gaze serious. "Richard, about last night, what I was going to say before we were interrupted." Richard braced himself. "You've made a decision." She nodded. "I have. But first, I need to tell you something else." Richard waited, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm. "Last night, watching you at the gala, seeing how you've changed, how you've grown, it made me realize something." Olivia's voice was quiet, reflective. "When I found that lump last year, I was terrified. Not just of being sick, but of going through it alone. And when you weren't there for me, it confirmed my worst fear, that I was already alone in our marriage." Richard winced, the truth of her words a painful, unavoidable reality. "David was there for me during the darkest time of my life," Olivia continued. "He saw me at my most vulnerable and never once made me feel weak. He reminded me of my strength when I had forgotten it." Richard's hope began to fade, a familiar chill creeping in. She was choosing David. Of course she was. Why would she choose the man who had failed her over the one who had literally saved her? "I care for David deeply," Olivia said, her gaze steady now. "And in another life, maybe we could have had something real." "In another life?" Richard looked up, surprised by her words, a fragile thread of hope beginning to weave its way back into his heart. Olivia reached across the table and took his hand. "Working with David last night to save Emily, I realized something important. What we have is a deep friendship, a professional bond, but it's not love, not the kind that lasts a lifetime." Hope surged, a powerful, exhilarating wave. "And us?" he dared to ask. "What we had was real, Richard. It was deep and true and powerful, and somewhere along the way, we lost sight of it. We let work and stress and daily life dim what we had built together. I let that happen, Richard corrected, taking full ownership. I put everything else before you, before us. Olivia squeezed his hand gently. We both made mistakes. I retreated into my work instead of fighting for us. I kept my health scare a secret instead of insisting you hear me. We both gave up too easily. Are you saying? Richard could hardly breathe, afraid to put his desperate hope into words. I'm saying I want to try again, Olivia said softly, her eyes now brimming with a mixture of sadness and hopeful resolve. Not pick up where we left off, but start something new, something better, something built on what we've learned apart. Joy, pure and overwhelming, washed over Richard like a tidal wave. Yes, he choked out, his voice thick with emotion. God, yes! But Olivia's expression grew serious, her grip firm. But Richard, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same woman you married. My work will always be a huge part of my life. I will always put my patients' needs first in emergencies, and I need a partner who supports that, who sees it as a strength, not a competition for my time. I see you, Olivia, Richard said earnestly, his gaze unwavering. All of you. The brilliant surgeon, the compassionate doctor, the woman who fights for what's right. I love every part of you, and I want to support your dreams, not compete with them. Tears filled Olivia's eyes, finally falling freely. That's all I ever wanted from you. What about the divorce? Richard asked cautiously, the practical reality of their situation. It's almost final. Olivia took a deep breath. I called my lawyer this morning. I've asked him to halt the proceedings. If you still want that, too. More than anything, Richard said, standing and pulling her into his arms, holding her close, savoring the feeling of her against him, a future blooming in his mind. I love you, Olivia Barnes. I never stopped loving you. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. I love you too. But this time we do things differently. We make each other a priority. We communicate. We fight for us every single day. Every single day, Richard promised, sealing his words with a kiss that spoke of both profound relief and renewed commitment. As they left the cafe hand in hand, Richard knew they faced a long, challenging road ahead. Trust, so easily broken, would need to be painstakingly rebuilt. Old, destructive habits would need to be dismantled, brick by brick. They would need to learn how to be partners again, not just in name, but in the truest, most profound sense of the word. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Richard felt hope. Real, tangible hope. Not just for a superficial reconciliation, but for a marriage that could be stronger, deeper, and more resilient than the one they had before. A marriage built on understanding, respect, intentional effort, and an unwavering, actively demonstrated love. What they didn't know was that their newfound commitment, their fragile second chance, would soon be tested in ways they never expected. A challenge so profound it would push them to their absolute limits and force them to confront the deepest fears they both carried, ultimately defining the rest of their lives together. 3 months after reconciling, Richard and Olivia were meticulously rebuilding their life together, step by careful step. They made a conscious decision not to move back into their old mansion, a place imbued with too many lingering memories and silent ghosts of their past failures. Instead, they bought a charming brownstone closer to the hospital, a space that felt entirely new, belonging equally to both of them, filled with warmth, vibrant color, and the promise of a shared future. Richard, transformed by his journey of self-discovery, had made good on his promise to unequivocally support Olivia's career. He established a remote office in their new home, allowing him to work effectively while remaining a constant, present force in their shared life. He actively participated in hospital functions, learned the names of her colleagues and even her young patients, genuinely investing himself in understanding her world, her passions, her challenges. Olivia, in turn, with her demanding schedule, made sure to create sacred space for their rekindled relationship. Date nights became non-negotiable, phones turned off, work anxieties left at the door. They talked, truly talked, delving into the intricacies of their days, their dreams, their deepest fears. The walls that had slowly, imperceptibly grown between them over the years now crumbled, replaced by a new intimacy, a profound connection deeper and more resilient than anything they had known before. It was a conscious effort, a daily commitment to active love, to listening without judgment, to offering support without reservation. One evening, as they sat on their rooftop garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues, Olivia rested her head on Richard's shoulder. "I saw David today," she said quietly, a testing note in her voice. Richard tensed slightly, a ghost of old jealousy, but he kept his voice casual, unperturbed. "How is he?" "Good. He's been seeing someone, a trauma surgeon from General Hospital. They seem happy." "And you're okay with that?" Richard asked carefully, truly wanting to know. Olivia looked up at him, her eyes clear and honest. "More than okay. I'm happy for him. He deserves someone who loves him completely, the way I love you." Richard's heart swelled at her words, a profound sense of gratitude washing over him. "I still can't believe we almost lost this." "But we didn't," Olivia reminded him, her voice soft but firm. "We found our way back." Richard kissed her gently, a silent promise in the gesture. Every day with her felt like a precious gift, one he would never, ever take for granted again. The next morning, Richard woke early, watching Olivia sleep peacefully beside him. She had been unusually tired lately, a symptom he attributed to her long hours working on a complicated case. He slipped out of bed quietly, determined to let her rest while he made a special breakfast. As he was setting the table, his phone rang. It was Jasmine. "Morning, Jazz," he answered cheerfully, a new lightness in his voice that hadn't been there months ago. "Richard?" Jasmine's voice was serious, edged with concern. "Is Olivia with you?" "She's sleeping. What's wrong?" Richard's cheer evaporated, replaced by a sudden chill. "Has she told you about her checkup yesterday?" Richard's blood ran cold. "What checkup?" Jasmine went silent. "Oh, Richard, I thought she would have told you by now." "Told me what?" Richard demanded, panic seizing his chest. "Jasmine, what's going on?" "It's not my place to say," Jasmine said carefully. "But you need to talk to her today." After hanging up, Richard stood frozen in the kitchen, a familiar fear gripping his heart. Was Olivia sick again? Had the lump returned? Why hadn't she told him? All the promises they had made to each other, no secrets, full communication, facing everything together, had they meant nothing? It was a painful echo of their past, a devastating fear that history was repeating itself. When Olivia finally came downstairs, wrapped in her robe, Richard was sitting at the table, breakfast untouched before him. "Morning," she said, stifling a yawn. "You let me sleep in." "I just got off the phone with Jasmine," Richard said, his voice tight, betraying his barely contained panic. "She mentioned a checkup yesterday." Olivia stilled, her expression instantly guarded. "I was going to tell you." "When?" Richard asked, the hurt and fear making his voice sharper than he intended. "When were you going to tell me that you're sick again? After keeping it from me the first time, after everything we've been through, you're still shutting me out." "Richard, it's not what you think," Olivia started, stepping towards him. "Then what is it?" he demanded, standing abruptly, the bitterness rising. "Because right now, all I can think is that history is repeating itself. That when things get tough, you still don't trust me enough to let me in." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "That's not fair. I was waiting for the right moment." "The right moment was yesterday, right after your appointment," Richard countered, his voice raw with frustration. "The right moment was as soon as you knew something was wrong. The right moment was any time before your sister had to call me, worried because she thought I already knew." "I'm not sick," Olivia said quietly, her voice barely a whisper through her tears. Richard stopped, his accusations dying on his lips. "What?" "I'm not sick," she repeated, looking directly at him. "I'm pregnant." The world seemed to stop spinning. "Pregnant?" Richard whispered, the word a fragile question. Olivia nodded, tears now streaming down her cheeks, a mix of joy and apprehension in her eyes. 8 weeks. I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you tonight with a special dinner. I wanted it to be perfect." Richard sank back into his chair, a maelstrom of shock, profound joy, and searing shame washing over him. A baby? We're having a baby? Olivia's expression softened at the raw wonder in his voice. Yes, despite everything, despite the stress of the divorce and reconciliation, we're having a baby. Richard crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, his own tears now falling freely, mingling with hers. I'm so sorry. I jumped to conclusions. I was so scared. I know, Olivia said, holding him tight, forgiving him with her embrace. And I should have told you right away. Old habits, I guess, but I promise, from now on, no more secrets. We face everything together. Richard placed a gentle, trembling hand on her still flat stomach. A baby, he repeated, the awe in his voice growing. Our baby. As they stood in their kitchen, wrapped in each other's arms, the final, deepest pieces of their broken relationship seemed to mend. This child, conceived in love amidst their journey of healing, would be a new beginning for both of them. A tangible symbol of hope, of second chances, of a love that had weathered the fiercest storm and emerged not unscathed, but infinitely stronger. It was a profound lesson in the danger of projection, of allowing past wounds to dictate present reactions, and the immense power of true open communication. What they didn't know, however, was that their greatest test still lay ahead, a trial that would push them to their absolute physical and emotional limits, forcing them to confront the deepest fears they both carried, and ultimately defining the rest of their lives together. The universe, it seemed, had one more crucible through which their bond needed to pass. 6 months later, Olivia sat in her doctor's office, Richard by her side, both of them anxiously awaiting the results of her latest tests. At 7 months pregnant, Olivia had been experiencing concerning symptoms: fatigue far beyond normal pregnancy exhaustion, persistent tiredness, shortness of breath, and occasional chest pain. Given her history with the breast lump, her doctor had wisely ordered comprehensive cardiac tests, and now they were waiting for answers, their hands clasped together, their breath held in collective suspense. Richard held Olivia's hand tightly, his thumb tracing soothing circles on her palm, a silent anchor in a churning sea of uncertainty. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," he promised, his voice low and firm. Olivia squeezed his hand back, grateful for his steady, unwavering presence. This time, she wasn't alone. This time, they were truly a team. When Dr. Reynolds finally entered the room, her expression was serious, her usual warmth tempered by professional gravity. "I have your results, Dr. Barnes." Olivia sat up straighter, her medical instincts kicking in, bracing herself for the worst. "Just tell me, is it cancer?" Dr. Reynolds shook her head. "No, not cancer, but we did find a problem with your heart. Peripartum cardiomyopathy. It's a rare form of heart failure that can occur during pregnancy." Richard felt the blood drain from his face, the words heart failure echoing ominously in the sterile room. "How serious is it?" he managed, his voice a tight whisper. "It can be very serious if left untreated," Dr. Reynolds explained, her gaze compassionate. "But we've caught it relatively early. With proper treatment and monitoring, many women recover completely after delivery." "And if it doesn't improve?" Olivia asked, her hand instinctively going to her swollen belly, her deepest fear manifesting. Dr. Reynolds hesitated. "In severe cases, it can lead to long-term heart problems, heart transplant, or worse." The word hung in the air between them, the unspoken possibility that Olivia might not survive this pregnancy, that their child might grow up without a mother, that all they had fought so hard to rebuild could be lost in an instant. It was a stark reminder of life's fragility, how even after overcoming so much, new, terrifying challenges can emerge. "What do we do?" Richard asked, his voice steadier than he felt, a testament to his newfound resolve. "Immediate bed rest," Dr. Reynolds instructed. "Medication to help your heart function. Close monitoring until delivery, which we may need to induce early. And after the baby is born, continue treatment until your heart recovers." Olivia nodded, her medical training helping her process the overwhelming information even as her emotions threatened to engulf her. "What about the baby?" she asked, her paramount concern. "The baby looks healthy," Dr. Reynolds assured her, "but we'll want to deliver as soon as it's safe to do so, to reduce the strain on your heart." After scheduling follow-up appointments with a cardiac specialist and arranging for comprehensive home care, Richard and Olivia left the office in a stunned silence, both lost in the terrifying implications of the diagnosis. Back at home, as Richard gently helped Olivia into bed, she finally broke down, the tears she had held back now flowing freely. "I'm scared, Richard. Not just for me, but for the baby. For us." Richard sat beside her, pulling her into his arms, holding her close, anchoring her in his strength. "I know. I'm scared too. But listen to me. You are the strongest person I know. You fought through harder things than this, and this time you're not fighting alone. What if—" Olivia began, but Richard gently placed a finger on her lips. "No. What if is not tonight. Tonight we hold on to hope. Tonight we believe in us." In the weeks that followed, their lives underwent a dramatic, profound transformation. Olivia, a woman accustomed to constant motion, to the relentless pace of a surgeon's life, struggled with the suffocating limitations of bed rest. Richard, having learned his painful lessons, rearranged his entire existence to care for her. He worked from home, his once bustling company now a secondary concern. He took over every household task, attended every doctor's appointment, a constant, unwavering presence. Friends and family rallied around them with an outpouring of support. Jasmine stayed with them for weeks, providing invaluable help with cooking and cleaning. Olivia's hospital colleagues, a testament to her impact, sent home-cooked meals and visited regularly, bringing updates on her patients, a lifeline to her professional world. Even David stopped by, offering medical journals and news of Emily Wilson, the young patient whose surgery had interrupted the gala, a quiet offering of friendship and respect. Through it all, Richard never left Olivia's side for long. He read to her, massaged her swollen, aching feet, talked to their unborn child, sharing his hopes and fears, and held her through the long, terrifying nights when fear made sleep impossible. It was during this period of intense vulnerability and shared struggle that their love deepened into an unbreakable bond, forged in the crucible of adversity. One stormy evening, as a fierce thunderstorm raged outside, Olivia watched Richard meticulously setting up a small bassinet in their bedroom. "Remember when we first met?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely audible above the drumming rain. "At that charity auction in Seattle?" Richard smiled at the memory, a rare moment of lightness. "You outbid me for that painting I desperately wanted. And then, with typical Olivia audacity, you invited me to dinner to convince me to sell it to you." Olivia laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "Best loss I ever took," Richard said, sitting beside her, taking her hand. "I got you instead of the painting." Olivia's expression grew serious, her eyes meeting his. "I never thought we'd be here. After the divorce papers, after everything, I thought we were over." "I'm grateful every day that we weren't," Richard said, his grip firm, his voice resolute. "That we found our way back to each other." "Even now?" Olivia asked, gesturing to her bed, to the array of medical equipment monitoring her fragile heart. "Even with all this?" "Especially now," Richard said, his voice brimming with conviction. "Olivia, when I saw that photo of you with David, when I thought I had lost you for good, I realized something. Success, money, power, none of it matters without someone to share it with. Without you." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, soft and profound. "I never stopped loving you, you know. Even at my angriest, even when I thought I was moving on with David, my heart was always yours." Richard leaned forward and kissed her gently, a silent, sacred promise passing between them. "And mine has always been yours. Always will be." 2 weeks later, Olivia went into labor. The delivery was difficult, a tense dance between joy and profound medical risk, with a team of specialists monitoring her heart's every beat. Richard never left her side, holding her hand, wiping her brow, breathing with her through each grueling contraction. When their daughter finally arrived, small and squalling, waving tiny, indignant fists, Olivia and Richard both wept, tears of immense joy, profound relief, and overwhelming love. "She's perfect," Olivia whispered, as the nurse placed the tiny, warm bundle on her chest. Just like her mother, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion, his heart overflowing. They named her Hope, a poignant testament to the unwavering faith that had carried them through their darkest times, the belief that love was worth fighting for, worth second chances, worth absolutely everything. In the months that followed, as Olivia's heart slowly, miraculously healed, and their daughter Hope grew stronger each day, Richard often reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this precious moment. The pain, the devastating separation, the agonizing fear of loss. Every single step had been necessary, a brutal but ultimately redemptive path leading to this family, this love, deeper and truer than anything he had ever known. He had learned the profound lesson that life's greatest treasures are not acquired, but nurtured, not bought, but earned through presence, empathy, and selfless love. 1 year to the day after signing the divorce papers that had so nearly ended their marriage, Richard took Olivia and their daughter Hope to the beach at sunset, a place of peace and new beginnings. As the waves crashed softly against the shore and their daughter played in the sand, giggling at the retreating foam, Richard knelt before Olivia, taking her hand. "Once I almost lost you through my own blindness," he began, his voice raw with heartfelt emotion. "I put everything else before what mattered most. I forgot to see you, to hear you, to cherish you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as Richard continued, pouring out his heart, laying bare the profound transformation within him. "This past year has taught me what truly matters. Not success or money or power, but love. The kind of love that forgives, that heals, that endures even the darkest storms." From his pocket, Richard pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a ring. Not her original wedding ring, but a new one, sparkling and radiant, a symbol of their new beginning, their reforged covenant. "Olivia Barnes, will you marry me again? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me, how much I love you, how grateful I am for our second chance?" Through her tears, Olivia smiled, a radiant, joyful light illuminating her face. "Yes," she said simply, her voice clear and strong. "Today and always, yes." As they sealed their promise with a kiss, their daughter, Hope, toddled towards them across the sand, her tiny arms reaching up, a living embodiment of their enduring love and renewed faith. Richard knew, with absolute certainty, that no success in business, no amount of wealth or power could ever compare to this. The family he had almost lost, the love he had almost thrown away, the beautiful, complex life they were now building together, day by day. The journey had been long and painful, filled with regret, heartache, and terrifying uncertainty. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the ocean in a blaze of orange and purple, Richard understood that every step had been necessary, every tear worth shedding, every moment of pain worth enduring, to bring them to this perfect, joyous moment. Their story wasn't over. It was merely entering a new, stronger chapter. There would undoubtedly be more challenges ahead, more mountains to climb, more valleys to cross. But they would face them together, united by a bond stronger for having been broken, wiser for having lost their way, and deeply, completely, unconditionally in love. And in the end, in the profound tapestry of life, that was all that truly mattered. The lesson for all of us, from Richard and Olivia's tumultuous journey, is this. True wealth in life is not measured in the accolades you accumulate, but in the love you cultivate. It's about presence, not just provision. It's about listening with your heart, not just your ears. It's about understanding that every relationship, every connection, is a living entity that requires constant care, intentional effort, and a profound commitment to putting the other person's well-being and emotional needs first. Don't wait for regret to force your hand. Don't wait until you see what you've lost reflected in someone else's appreciation. Cherish, nurture, and actively love what you have, today and always, because some second chances, no matter how desperately sought, may never come. And the ones that do, like Richard and Olivia's, are a testament to the enduring power of redemption and a love that refuses to be truly broken.